good afternoon, wherever you are in the world watching this. A big hello from Melbourne, Australia, and which is what day is it? It's got to be day 4 of the Australian Open, and it's a pleasure to be back. Hopefully you're enjoying these live streams. Control the controllables. Anybody that is on right now, then please say hello. In the chat, you can get in touch with us. You can ask your questions. This is your show. We're here to give you what you want. I was a minute or two late. I got my eye on the screen right now because Great Britain's Jack Draper is currently into the 5th hour of tennis against Kokkinakis from Australia. I think Margaret Court Arena, I believe that it's on. The crowd are going crazy. It's a big old match that's happening. And Jack Draper, I love Jack to bits, but he is so impressive what he's doing. I mentioned on our preview show before the Australian Open that I felt that maybe he would get found out because he hasn't really had a pre-season. He doesn't tend to enjoy these conditions in Australia, although it hasn't been as warm as previous years. And up until he played the first round, the most tennis that he'd played was 1 hour 15 minutes, and here he is in 4 hours 10 minutes, 4 hours 20 minutes. Looks fresh as a daisy. He did a great job at the end of the 4th set. So that's sounds like it's going to be the highlight of today's tennis. Obviously, there's been lots of tennis. There has been some rain again here in Melbourne. We've had what I believe is it's not necessarily a big shock, but what a draw that was. Naomi Osaka against Mukova in the second round, and Mukova is absolutely showing that she's one of the best players in the world over the last couple of years whenever she has been fit. And Naomi Osaka beat her in 3 sets today, and it's another big one for the podcast. Naomi Osaka was one that we selected to look out for. I've been kind of hitting that drum for a while. People said various things, of course, about Patrick Mouratoglou. I believe that he was the right coach for Naomi Osaka at this stage in her career, and I guess that's kind of been proven right now. They're starting to put some results together. Can her body stay together? So that was a big standout for me. And then I have to talk about my girls, Gabby Dabrowski and Erin Routliffe, in a high intensity match today. I think everyone saw the draw. You try and obviously downplay the draw. You don't want to, or you change the feeling of nerves to excitement. But the reality is Gabby and Erin haven't played this year yet. Erin did fracture a couple of ribs at the WTA finals, so she was taking a little bit longer to come back. So first match of the year is always difficult. You then throw into it that they're playing against another top 10 player in the world in doubles in Desiree Kravchuk, and her partner, number 11 in the world in singles, Danielle Collins. It was a humdinger of a first round draw, and just had the feeling that maybe it was going to go against them today, and fair play to Des and Danielle, who played a great match. But Gabby and Erin, I've got to hand it to them. They're fighters. They came from 3-love down in the 3rd set, and also 40-30 down, so double break, 3-love down, 40-30 on Kravchuk's serve to reel off 6 games in a row and win 6-3 in the 3rd. So it felt big, it felt important. It's always nice to get the year off to a good start, and very proud of the efforts. And then personally, my side, Michael Venus and Nikola Mektic, who I'm also looking after in 2025, they will start their campaign tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. So once I finish with this, I'll be finishing scouting reports, get a couple of hours sleep before my beloved Newcastle United play early tomorrow morning here in Melbourne, and then off to the courts for another exciting day ahead. And what else has been happening? Well, I want to tell you, I've got someone coming on who's working on the practice court desk, actually. So Ollie Corres, anyone that knows Ollie, Ollie's incredibly worked with me at Soto Tennis for 6 years, and he has somehow got himself a gig on the practice courts here at Melbourne Park. So we've talked a lot about practice and the impact and how that happens at tournaments. And we're going to bring him on, ask him some questions, see how it all works. If you've got any questions for Ollie, then please bring them through as well. And I have to let you know, Andy Murray as well. We all love Andy Murray. He's a big favourite of ours here at Control the Controllables. And I walked into the locker room today, and there he was. And he's seeing him and Djokovic together. Obviously, they're through to the third round now here at Australian Open. And I shook hands. Andy's always very nice, kind to me. Our relationship goes back a long way, back into when he was about 12 years old and he was beating all of us as he came onto the scene. And, there was just a little wry smile, and I welcomed him to the dark side. And seeing him coaching arguably the greatest ever male tennis player is really cool, right? It's a really cool thing to see, and he looks fit as a fiddle. I tell you, he still looks in great shape, and seeing him hitting some balls with Novak as well. But great to see Andy Murray out here in Melbourne, and for the whole tennis world, we're all big Andy Murray fans. I think that's going to add to the legacy of Novak Djokovic as well. And talking about the kind of legacy, we then get to the other side of the game, and I was fortunate enough to, the BBC wanted to hear a little bit of, I know I don't have a strong Geordie accent, but to hear that northeastern accent, they asked me to come and work and do a shift with them last night, which is always a pleasure. I love it, talking tennis. And the way that we're situated at BBC in the little pit, you're courtside, you're directly behind the glass, and actually the players are literally almost like if you go to the aquarium and you're kind of looking out on the fish, and they kind of swim and come and sometimes hit against the glass. That's what the pit's like. And we were doing, to start with, the Alex de Minaur match against Botic van der Zandschulp. And then what you're doing is you're commentating, but you've then got the screens. So we had the Katie Boulter match, and a great match, 7-5 in the third, winner over Rebecca Marino from Canada. And as we're doing it, Gigi Salmon, who I'm commentating with, she turned around and she asked me a question. And as it happened, I just saw Botic van der Zandschulp almost running into the glass, like the biggest fish of the lot, like a shark coming towards us. He opens his legs and he pulls his racket back, and he absolutely ripped this through the leg shot that went like an absolute bullet train for a cross-court winner. And this happened at the very moment that Gigi asked me a question about Katie Boulter. And all I could say was, wow. And Gigi looked at me as if to say, what are you talking about? That was not a question that you would answer with wow. I said, no, you have, Gigi, I can't believe what I've just seen. And Abigail Johnson, who was next to me as well, she also let out a wow. We had the Australian voices flying from the commentary box. If you get a chance, look at the Botic van der Zandschulp through the leg shot. It was incredible. And just imagine me, Dan Kiernan, at an aquarium, almost could touch Botic as he played this shot. It was an absolute privilege to see. And, so exciting. And then I got to commentate and be part of Katie Boulter as Alex de Minaur made his way to that court, and the love story that obviously everyone understandably is loving right now as they've got engaged, and they're trying to take Katie Boulter away from the Brits to become an Aussie. And then Alex turned up in the crowd, and Katie stepped up from looking like she might lose the third set to winning 7-5 in the third. And then I thought, well, that's been cool, as a tennis lover, someone who just absolutely lives and breathes it, to be able to talk and be around that. And then our attention turned to Andre Rublev and João Fonseca. And that's right, João Fonseca. Remember the name. That name is going to be far and wide. I'm telling you, the kid's dynamite. It was back in maybe October He was the one to watch that we told you about in our CTC reel. At that time, he was 145 in the world. This kid is going places. He's the real deal. It was spectacular. You couldn't take your eye off it. He's dynamic. He makes the ball move. He's a natural with the crowd. He's a natural with the media. He's just a young boy at 18 years old. And the best way I can describe it is he's the next Carlos Alcaraz. He plays with joy. He plays with so much. And one that I talked about on commentary last night is this is what South America needs, and this is exactly the right time because, Spanish-speaking countries, I know it's Portuguese in Brazil, but the South American countries, they love their tennis. It's a massive market for tennis. Juan Martín del Potro has just retired. We haven't had on the male side many players over the last few years, and this kid's a superstar. And somebody told me today that he's the most Googled name in Brazil over the last 24 hours. So this kid is absolutely going places. We're gonna see lots of him, and that's João Fonseca. You get a chance to see him I went and bought a bit of sushi today, and he was there with his mate, and he was on the phone, but there were just like two kids hanging out. But they happened to be hanging out here at the Australian Open after he's just beaten the world number 9. And that's one of the questions that were being asked, how high can he go? He plays Sonego next. He does have a winning record already against Sonego. And, it's going to be interesting, how far he can go. Now, do I believe that he's going to win the Australian Open this year? No, I don't. Do I believe that he'll win Grand Slams? Absolutely, I do. That's how good I believe he is. I said it on commentary last night. I felt maybe the energy that he's exerting in the come-ons and the vamoses, and it's exciting to watch, but there is a different management at Grand Slams, best of 5 sets, and I do have a slight concern that he's going to get tired. I was worried a bit last night if it went to 4 sets. But yeah, I think he can definitely go through another couple of rounds. I think then maybe the mental, emotional fatigue might catch up with him. And as with anything, he's going to have to build the tolerance. He's going to have to build up to being someone who can go deep in these events and win these events. They're not easy. It takes a lot of prep. It takes a lot of, understanding yourself, your body, your mind, where you stay, the detail that these players go into. And he's at the very start of what is a very exciting career ahead. I have absolutely no doubt on that. And before Ollie comes in, because I think Ollie will be joining us and we'll get our questions to him, the other one that I want to ask your opinion on, we spoke about it on commentary last night. I have this thing, seeds, we kept on hearing Katie Bolter, seeded Katie Bolter. And I'm like, you cannot be 21, 22 seed. And I know we've had it for a few years in tennis, but what do we think? Should there be seeds? Should there be more than 16 seeds? Should the 17 to 32, what should they be called? Should there be pre-seeds? Should there be not quite high enough seeds? Should they just not be seeded and we have it a little bit more open after the top 16? I just always think it's a bit naff when we've got the 17 to 32 seeding, but that's my take. That's my opinion. What's yours? Reach out, let us know about what you think on the seeds. Should they be more than 16 seeds at Grand Slams? Now, Ollie will be here any second now, but one question I just want to ask is sorry, I don't want to ask, is somebody has asked, this must be someone in the know, because they said, how is the brownie? And that is reference to tonight. We went out for some food tonight. A bunch of, Soto tennis coaches, or ex-Soto tennis coaches, were good friends of mine. That's the beauty of Melbourne as well. There's so many people in the area. We went out, and I think they played a little bit of a trick on me. They told the restaurant that it was my birthday. So as Ollie comes in, he was one of them with a smile on his face. Before I know it, these guys are bringing me a cake, a brownie, with a candle, and they're singing happy birthday to the old man. And for anyone asking, it's not my birthday. March 27th is if you want to send a card in the post, but it's not my birthday today. So I think hence the question, how was the brownie? But the brownie was very nice. I did share it with Ollie and with Mark, who was with us as well. And a big welcome to our live stream. Ollie Corres, how's things?
Thank you very much, Dan. It's a pleasure to be on. Big happy birthday as well. And yeah, I feel like this is a long time coming. I think little insight for the listeners, they might not know, there's actually an unreleased episode of Control the Controllables that I feature in. So maybe one day that'll be released, but let's see. Let's hope this goes a little bit better than that did.
And why wasn't it released is the question people are asking right now.
I think, well, I was one of 4 panelists, so I'll shift the blame over to those other 3.
The quality wasn't high enough. We don't just put any content out, guys, as you know. Now, if you have it, now's your time. If you have any questions at all for Ollie Corres working on the practice desk here at Melbourne Park. And first of all, tell us, how do you get a job? How do you get a job like that? You know, you're a tennis coach, a very good tennis coach at that. I know that you've been doing a little bit of traveling and doing some coaching around the world, you know, taking that time. But then all of a sudden, you're the one that's booking Arina Sabalenka's practice court. You're booking Yannick Sinner's practice court. You know, you're dealing with the challenges that come with the tennis circus that comes around the world. How does one go about getting such a job?
Yes, I think the conventional way would be get your application in online via the Australian Open. However, I was lucky enough to work at Wimbledon last year doing the scoreboards. And just through the team that I was working with, I managed to get a contact out here in Australia. And before I know, I was in an interview. Wasn't quite sure what I was interviewing for, but quickly worked out that I was interviewing for the practice desk. And yeah, lucky enough that they gave me the opportunity. And here I am a few months later, and definitely experiencing all the challenges and getting a proper face-to-face insight with, yeah, as you say, the traveling circus that is the 2 tours.
And what is it? Because we spoke about this the other day, right? We talked about practice privileges, you know, and you might have an opinion on this, you might not, but I guess there's protocols in place. It feels a little bit, sometimes our sport can be entitled, it's building a hierarchy. You know, it's kind of, if you're seeded, you get this. If you play singles, you get that. If you know, there seems to be all of these privileges in place. But first and foremost, there's obviously a lot of you working on the practice desk. How is that managed? How is that contained? And then tell us when it goes wrong, and it obviously does at times when the rain comes, you know, all of a sudden the schedule gets thrown up. We know that from working at tennis clubs, tennis academies. Scheduling is in the logistics around scheduling is very challenging. How does youngsters like yourself, who don't necessarily have any previous experience of working with superstars and their demanding coaches, how is that then kept together and operated in a fair and orderly manner?
Yeah, I guess first of all, you know, Tennis Australia, they do a good job in their recruitment. It's a pretty strong team, especially from the top. You know, the supervisor that's been running the practice desk, she's been doing it for 20 years now. She's got people under her that have been doing it for a number of years as well. But as you say, yeah, there are a lot of protocols that we have to learn, and a lot of kind of reliance on us, the team, to stick to those protocols, because essentially, you know, like all the tournaments around the world, as you'll know, there are privileges that are given to seeded players that aren't given to unseeded players. There's privileges given to singles players that aren't given to doubles players. And for the majority, most people accept this, they get on with it. And as long as that we can provide a reason why we might deny certain things for certain people, 95% of the time it's met with understanding and and a nice, polite conversation.
And I'm not going to ask you at all. You're still in the middle of the job. We're still in the middle of the tournament. I don't want you to mention any names at all. But tell us two stories. One, the biggest challenge you've had of the last 10 days to 2 weeks, and two, the nicest interaction that you've had and why.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the grief sticks out a little bit more than the niceties, but that is also because the grief that you get is pretty rare compared with, like I say, 95% of the people are a pleasure to work with and to deal with. I guess, one quite a common thing is, everyone wants to practice between the hours of 11 and 3 p.m.
It's weird, isn't it? Isn't it weird that that's the case? It's such a tennis thing. Oh, 11 till it's amazing how we've made those hours up as the time that professional players practice. It's bizarre.
Yeah, and some people even want to practice twice within that period. They'll do their 11 till 12, and then they'll want to do their 2 till 3. And for the most part, that it is possible. We have to prioritize match warm-ups on site. So during those times, you will probably be given a court off-site, which not many people like. So
just to jump in there, Ollie, the reason they don't like it is twofold. One, Jack Draper's just broken Kokkinakis, by the way, to go 5-3 up in the 5th set, which is incredible. Just hit a backhand winner to go 15 love up. I mean, what an effort this is by Jack. But yeah, back to the practice courts. Off-site tends to be a different court surface. It's the same court surface, different speed, and that's something that is an issue for players, right? They wanna practice as much as possible on a court that represents what they're going to play a match. And the second one, and we had this yesterday, you come off the court, you're sweating. There is that window of getting your food, you're stretching, doing your recovery. And then you've got to wait for a car. Then you sit in the car for 25, 30 minutes. You get stuck in traffic. You're not back on site for 45 minutes, 50 minutes. You then have, before you can have your shower, before you can start your recovery protocols. So when we're talking about elite athletes, I understand coming from their point of view why there is those challenges as well. It's not just people being divas for divas' sake, but obviously there's the logistical issue of it all happening on site as well.
No, for sure, and we obviously understand all those issues as well. But there have been a lot of people that think a little bit more outside the box, and they do different things with their practice in order to get those other things. So, we can give courts early in the morning if you want to play on site. So there's been a number of people that have come in always wanting a match court at 8 a.m. in the morning. When we offer those courts to some other people, they turn their nose up and say, I'm not getting out of bed at that time. Which is, their choice. And then also is practicing late at night. And to answer your question about the nicest interaction, I feel like I can name the name on this one. But so Tamara Korpatch, who's such a sweet player. She comes and trains every night at 9 p.m. when all the matches are finished, and she finds a court and she goes out with her bucket of balls and her coach, and she goes and practices at 9 p.m. Might not be the right thing to do the night before a match, let's say, but she knows she can get a match court at that time, and she does it. She no fuss about it, and that's what she does.
Jack Draper won 6-3 in the fifth set. Unbelievable.
Nice.
Unbelievable. But and come on, then what about the worst story? Where's it gone to? I heard a rumor that it went all the way to Craig Tiley with one player.
Yeah, we have had a player go to the top, the tournament director, who took a visit to our desk to sort of find out what was going on. This player has had a spiel lined up ready for the past sort of 3-4 days when they haven't been able to get a practice court on site during those peak hours that I mentioned before. And each time when they've been told they have to go off site, they haven't liked that. They have had practice courts. They've had 2 hours of practice courts on the day that they went to Craig Tiley, and essentially, he found out that she was able to train, and it was sort of quashed there. So some players they do like to see if they can take it over our heads on things, but I think the one thing that maybe you can attest to, Dan, is that it's the same more or less wherever you go around the world. And for some reason, sometimes players think that this will be different. This will be their one time that, something is, they get a little bit more than they're used to. I don't know whether how it compares to other.
Absolutely. And I think actually there's certain players that probably have their own stresses that they deflect onto the practice desk, or they deflect onto the canteen, or they deflect onto the person who's doing the laundry, and that's just life, right? We have that in everyday life. Someone shouting at the shopkeeper, someone shouting at the bus driver, someone shouting at the bank attendant, whoever it might be. Unfortunately, that is everywhere. But I'd like to think overall players, coaches represent well. And it's nice to hear that you're saying that the high percentage of it is. Now, a couple of questions, Ollie, that are coming in. We've got a question here from a tennis player from Canada, who we might know quite well. How can the practice court booking system be improved?
Yeah, it is a good question. Again, I've been on the job for just over a week now, so I'm sure there'll be, a bit of a longer answer maybe at the end of the tournament. I guess the kind of the cop-out answer really is for there to be more courts. We say it every day. At this period of the tournament, there's so many players who you think there's, that's 128 men, 128 women, plus all the doubles players, plus the juniors that are starting to arrive. Plus then, you got people like, I picked up the phone the other day and it was Pat Cash wanting the court to warm up for his Legends match. And
I hope not in between 11 and 3, Pat.
No, for Pat though, he did get an indoor court on a non-rainy day, so so it's trying to manage these tricky days, sort of just after qualifying until the second round, let's say. For sure, in that period, there needs. Well, it's two things: either, like I said, get more courts, or find some other solution, or people just understand that there's upwards of maybe like 300 people that need a practice court every day. So I'm sure over the next few days, once more people start leaving the venue and getting knocked out, it's going to get a lot smoother, let's say.
When you're in the tournament in the quarterfinals, you don't need practice courts because you're feeling good and you're already there. Now, in terms, a bit of a different question, but I think that this is quite a nice question for you, because you obviously, you're not on the desk all day, and you get to, I know you're a big tennis fan, a big sports fan, you get to enjoy Australian Open, right? I know you've watched one of your heroes, Carlos Alcaraz, training and working on his serve the other day, looking at his ball toss. It's a nice story that you were sharing. I know that you've been on various courts watching different players, and this question comes in to say, how much does the crowd bias play a factor in how players play? And for example, playing Australian players or fan favourites. And I thought this might fit in quite nicely with your Court 3 story from today. that this question's come in.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting being sat on court 3, where you had a Spaniard, Caballes Baena, who was playing an Aussie, and for the majority of the match, first 2 sets, the crowd were behind James Duckworth, he was the Aussie. But then as the 3rd set started to go on, and Caballes Baena was looking to get the break and sort of seal the match, you started to notice more and more Lebanese fans enter the stadium because of who was on after, who was Hadi Habib. There's a massive Lebanese population here in Melbourne, and more, the court started to fill up. Lebanese flags were coming out. The match was getting suspended quite frequently due to the rain. So the final set took over 2 hours to actually, nearly 3 hours actually to happen. In sort of real time. And all of a sudden, this Aussie found himself being on the wrong end of the crowd support because everyone wanted Caballes Baena to finish off the match. So at his home slam, he was having sort of 80% of the stadium cheer against him, which, played a part. I mean, he was looking pretty cheesed off. He was looking up at the crowd, and yeah, it was quite interesting. And the thing about Melbourne is it's such an international place. You think it's so far away from, Europe and everything else, but there's such a huge international population that you'll be sat on one court and, you'll be hearing 100 Argentinians going crazy for Carabelli, which is, and it's almost like a Davis Cup match. We had it today on the court next to the girls. We had Benjamin Bonzi playing. And it was like a Davis Cup match.
But they were chanting in English. I think they were saying, "Oh, Bonzi, we love you." It was something like that. It sounded like an English football chant in English about Bonzi. I thought maybe we might get the French flavour rather than an English speaking song about Benjamin Bonzi.
But I think the Australian crowd, if they're neutral in a match, they'll just go with the vibes. This is a crowd that absolutely loves tennis and just loves the atmosphere. It's the summer over here, and that everyone's here for a good time. So when a couple of Frenchies start chanting for their man, they're going to be right behind them.
But there is last couple of bits, because I always promise we don't go much more than 30 minutes on these live streams. But there's 2 Aussie crowds. And again, I was commentating last night on Rod Laver, and there was an Alex de Minaur Australian crowd. And I think the Alex de Minaur Australian crowd, maybe on a Wednesday night they're at Rod Laver, on a Thursday night they're at the theatre. And Alex de Minaur was trying desperately to get them going, and he was roaring away. But there's then a Nick Kyrgios and a Kokinakis Australian crowd who, on a Wednesday night, they're at the tennis on John King Arena, and on a Thursday night, they are in some nightclub going absolutely crazy, taking I don't know what they're taking, but something that's going to keep them dancing all night long. There's these 2 different crowds, and it seems like different players stir this different atmosphere in the Australian crowd, and it's really interesting to see.
Yeah, and I think one of the main reasons for that, just being in and around the tournament, is actually how accessible it is to get here on site. I've only experienced Wimbledon before, and it's one of the most difficult events to get tickets for. And here you can just jump online, get a grounds pass. You can pretty much get, for a price, obviously, you can get stadium tickets as well. So it almost it feels like people are waiting to see what the draw is and the schedule, and then they just jump online and get a ticket. Whereas as a Wimbledon crowd, you pretty much know what you're going to expect more or less all throughout the tournament. Whereas here you get a bit of a maverick that goes a bit deeper in, and that you're going to have his sets of, or their fan base are going to be probably behind them all the way through.
And lastly, Ollie, your first time at Australian Open?
Yeah, first time in Australia. Yeah.
We we hear it. One of our questions we always ask on Control the Controllables is, what's your favourite slam? And outside of those kind of stoic Brits who just can't bring themselves to say that it's not Wimbledon, because Wimbledon has this hold over us. And yes, we love Wimbledon and it's amazing and it's special in so many ways. But the majority of people do say Australian Open, in terms of the whole experience from a fan standpoint, from a player standpoint, from a coach standpoint. Give us just in 60 seconds your take on the Australian Open here in Melbourne.
Yeah, I think from a visual point of view, nothing quite beats Wimbledon. Being there, you feel like you're on a movie set. You feel like you've stepped into like a Harry Potter like magical sort of land. Whereas here, it definitely feels like you're in more of a tennis club, but that has been set up to host a huge event that goes beyond tennis as well. Like there's far more here to do from a fan point of view. You could spend a day here easily hopping around all the bars and not actually see a minute of tennis being played, and still have bars left to go in and places to go and sit and do activities and things like that. So it feels like more of a party. It feels like more of a event for the Australian summer. But as well, I'm very surprised about just how big it is in a mainstream aspect. And here in Australia, they're free-to-air TV shows all the matches for free online and on TV as well. And it dominates the news, the tabloids, the mainstream media. Everything is centered around this event. So I'm still saying Wimbledon is my favorite slam. I'm using my 50% stoic Britishness to stick on that yet, but I've still got a week and a half here, so catch me at the end of the tournament maybe.
Ollie Corres, your first time on Control the Controllables where we've decided to air you, your second time recording. And maybe
Yes.
if this wasn't live, you might have got cut again. However, I don't think so, because it's great to get the insight, the inside, and that's what this podcast, that's what these live streams are trying to do. They're trying to get in on the inside of these major events. Thank you for all your questions. I know there was a few that we didn't get to. We will be back, if not tomorrow, the day after. So please get your questions in, keep them coming. But until next time, I'm Dan Kiernan, and we are Control the Controllables.